Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Hey everyone, checking in on the USMJ sector, and I ran down most of these names. I skipped some like IIPR, which aren't in the same setup. Pretty much everybody that was weak and then bounced, I calculated the percentage bounce using the TradingView tool, so give me a % or two of wiggle room. But I calculated the percent of the size of the bounce and then the distance back to the lows from where we closed on Friday. The sector as a whole, majority of the names saw some consolidation on Friday. And it's important to do this stuff out rather than just looking visually. For an example, look at CVSI, or actually no, it's KSHB. So KSHB, this little move, and then you look at it and you compare it to TRUL, huge move. And if I cover up the y-axis here, you would say TRUL bounced way stronger than KSHB. When in reality, KSHB's bounce was 37% and TRUL was 23%. That's a third more bounce than this is. So the takeaway from that is do the math out, because visually the y-axis and the scaling of the chart can change the way that these bounces look. So looking at the list, Tilt had the strongest move. That's not surprising. The penny stocks that get crushed the hardest are going to see the biggest percentage moves. And again, this list is not taking into account how beat up the names were before the bounce. This is all I care about, is from that bounce low, how high did we go? And the names that were beat up the most, MedMen and IAN, they were at the bottom of the list as the weakest names. They had some of the strongest bounces because, again, when you flush through the order book on the way down, you can run back up in that V-shaped recovery much easier as that order book gets thinned out. So CVSI was another one that got pretty beat up. It had a very strong bounce, and I'll just leave this here for a moment for you to look at. And then when I did the distance back to the lows, for the most part, I left the order from size of the bounce, strength, strongest to weakest bounce, and it's mostly in line with where we stand close to the low. CVSI didn't get back as much as Tilt did, but other than that, pretty much the names that bounce the furthest have a little bit more space to work with before we head back to those lows. So getting into the regular technical analysis, it goes without saying that daily trend changes are needed for this bounce to mean anything, and until we change daily trends, we're not going to say anything about the 2019 low potentially being set, because right now these bounces are all just looking for daily lower highs, and they have a lot of work to do to gain the confidence back from the bulls in the sector. Also, check out the market video that I did this weekend, because the S&P 500 is in a weekly equilibrium that is likely going to break sometime within the next few weeks, and that's going to dictate momentum. We're either going to be looking at all-time highs in the market, or we're going to lose the weekly uptrend for the first time in 10 months, which is going to be a notable difference depending on which way it goes, and it will impact this sector. So GWPH, we're looking up at resistance. Anything under 127.65 is a lower high. We haven't topped out on the bounce yet, whereas most names had bearish candlesticks forming on Friday, just indicating temporary bull exhaustion. GWPH is not there yet, and it did have a slight uptick in volume. So we're watching for a lower high compared to 127.65. The bulls would then have to hold the low of 105.10 and then change the daily trend. From there, we zoom out to the weekly, and we would just look for a weekly lower high. So again, it's one step at a time. Change the daily trend, we zoom out, and we're just looking for a weekly lower high after that takes place. At least we have some short-term setups now, and for all of these setups, I'm going to speak in generalization. You're either, number one, already in a position, and you have an exit game plan for that position, whether it's scaling out into profit like I did with CGC on this bounce, or whether you're going to try and hold longer term, which means either placing a break-even stop loss or a stop loss below our recent low, because if that low breaks, then obviously we haven't found bottoms yet. Otherwise, if you are in cash and looking for a position, you're either looking for an entry, probably at this point, you're looking for an entry on a daily high or low. So once we clearly top out, as some of these names have, and once we pull back, it would then be a play off of the low support. So let's just say, as an example, the low was $10. We bounced up to $12. Then as we pull back and we get down to maybe $11, you start scaling in entries and putting your stop below $10 to try and get that daily higher low. That's a fairly aggressive move just because we are in a downtrend. And while we did have notable bull volume and daily higher lows are absolutely positive, I would consider that a bit more aggressive by a bull to be looking for that daily higher low. And a bit more cautious and patient bull is going to wait for the daily trend to actually change. And a really cautious bull is going to wait for the weekly trend to change. So GWPH, the hourly uptrend being lost, will be the indication that our temporary top has been set. And we set an hourly higher low at 118.21 at the end of the day. IIPR, I didn't include it in the list because it wasn't in the same setup as far as a dump and bounce. We're in a very clear equilibrium here on the daily with our low, high, higher low, lower high, higher low. We're scouting a lower high compared to 96.76. And right now the range is 96.76 to 86.72 that we are currently smack dab in the middle between. If we get a bull break, we zoom out to the weekly. And the weekly bounce would get continuation. And you could call it a weekly trend change with a little higher low and then higher high. If we get a bear break on the daily, we're headed back down to the low of 82.15, and we're still in a weekly downtrend at that point. CURA, some buying at the end of the day to help the bulls close strong after a little dump and then buying. There's been a common play in the USMJ space of the last 10 minutes of some bull action, and there is opportunity within that. Not my style, but worth watching. You know, if you start to see some big buying coming in, jumping on that and flipping it for 1 or 2% right at the end of the day, there's been a lot of names that have done this. Either way, we started pulling back. Anything compared to 685 is a daily higher low. So bulls need to hold 685 and then break 929 to change the daily trend and to be looking at follow through on this bounce. Because again, size of the dump versus the size of the bounce. It's a great bounce. There's a lot of opportunity, but the bulls still have a lot of work to do as far as making a recovery. CWeb. So CWeb hasn't exactly topped out yet, and we had a very notable market buy at the end of the day. This is about $1.3, $1.4 million, and to see that happen on the OTC is either someone messed up an order or we don't really know what's going on there. But bottom line is it's notable. Highest 5-minute volume candlestick in a very long time, and it was all one big market buy. So that's keeping the bulls with a daily inside bar. We haven't topped out yet on this bounce. We would have to break the low of Friday, 1831, for the top to be set. We're currently rejecting from the daily exponential resistance. When we top out, we have to pull back and hold 1560 and then change the daily trend and get some follow through. CL is topping out at the daily 12-period exponential resistance, a great visual guide. 851 is a double top now. Bulls are hoping for an inverse head and shoulders pattern where we would have our left shoulder. That's our neckline. There's our head. That's our neckline at the same level. Have to form the right shoulder, hold the low, and then break that double top of resistance. So support is $7. Bulls have to hold 7 and break 851 to change this trend. OH. So OH on this bounce has to hold 523 and turn around and break resistance of 644. One thing I want to point out is that for some names here, it is possible that we can see, if we see a green day on Monday, a lot of these names are going to negate the top of the bounce being set yet. The daily candlestick says on a lot of these names, yeah, it looks like we're tiring out and our top has been set. But look at the volume, just as for an example. OH and CL had no volume. CWeb held on just fine. It's possible if we get a green day on Monday, OH, this could be a little 4-hour bull flag. And even CGC, which obviously isn't in the US space at the moment, but the 4-hour time frame for CGC, this is a potential, taking off extended hours, it's a little potential bull flag. So if we have a green day, we can negate the top being set for now, and that would just give the bulls more space to work with from the low if we do get a green day on Monday. So not necessarily saying red is coming on Monday. We did close with bears having some momentum down near a lot of the lows on a lot of these tickers, but it is possible that that 4-hour trend could see a change and follow through for this move to keep going. If we have a red Monday across the sector, then temporary bounce tops will be set and will be focused back on that low. So for OH, that low is 522. Daily trend change is needed. TRUL, close to breaking a weekly trend change. 1285, rejected the price. That's a double top. Did we keep the hourly uptrend? I would say that we did. If we break the low of 1225 on Friday, then it's a double top and we have to form a higher low. If we break 1285, we have a weekly trend change. Low, high, higher low, and that will be a higher high, and that will be the first weekly trend change for the bulls since the all-time high. So it would be very notable, and actually not the all-time high, but the second most all-time high. So keep an eye on the TRUL bulls because they are on the verge of accomplishing something that every single bull in the sector wants to see their individual ticker do. IAN, just a daily lower high being set, close at the low of the day. If we break the low of Friday on Monday, our top is set. We're looking at 156 as a must hold, and resistance is 214. So again, this was a solid percentage bounce with a lot of gains opportunity, 35, 37%. But considering where we came from, that bounce doesn't do anything to shifting long-term momentum. So again, we have to keep perspective. And that long-term perspective is daily downtrends on pretty much everybody in the sector except for a few names. And until that changes, we have to be skeptical of any bull moves. MedMen, very significant bounce off the lows, but also a ton of profit taking on Friday. Bulls need a higher low compared to 178 and a break of 247 to change the daily trend. GTII has a bunch of space to work with. Have to hold 1048 and break 1289 to change the daily trend and get some follow through. And it is a candidate for a potential weekly trend change as well, but we have to get over 1445, still a solid 15+% away. But it did hold a higher low on the weekly, which most names have not been able to do. Harv gave back a lot of its move. That looks like a bear flag on the daily. Bulls have to hold 358 and break 452 to change this daily trend. KSHB. So a sizable bounce. Coming down, we have to hold 132 and break 183 to change this trend. Potential bottom fishing play. So one of the scenarios I laid out is if I'm cash and looking for a bullish entry, maybe I scale in 155, 140, or actually let's go 155, 150, and then I put a stop loss under 132. There's still a lot of percentage space there, so I'd have to use position sizes that were according to that volatility risk, but that's the potential play if you want to be an aggressive bull. Scaling in for the higher low and hoping the daily trend change can get some follow through. CVSI, have to hold 155 and break 271 to change the daily trend. NBEV, daily trend change needed. 339 is resistance. 257 is support. You can see I'm flying through this technical analysis because once we do the first few names and we can see everybody's doing the same thing, it gets very easy to analyze the individual names. They're all having the same setup. The only difference is the percentage distance off of the lows and the percentage size of the bounce. PYX is a bit of a different setup. That's a daily bear flag right now. I'd say the bulls have to get over $13 to try and negate this bear flag. Anything under 1381 is a daily lower high. So bears still in control. 1180 is a bit of a double bottom. We did clearly break it, but bulls are defending 1180 support right now. And that's the only really nearby support. If 1180 breaks, we're looking down at 1130. ZYNE, also a fairly weak bounce. Bulls have to hold 683 and break 815 for some bounce follow through. And Tilt, huge bounce, gave it all back. Again, I don't have interest in playing penny stocks. That was in my past. So when people keep messaging me, why aren't you covering Tilt? It was the best bounce. Because it's the least amount of liquidity on a ton of names out there. The day before the bounce, we traded how many dollars worth? Wow, we traded less than $100,000 the day before the bounce. So I can't trade that. And I don't want to trade that. So by all means, if you have lower capital and you're not going to try and place $50,000 orders that are going to use half the day's volume on slow days, then by all means trade these penny stocks. It's just not what I'm looking to do right now. And the pullback is another reason why. There are a lot of people that bought between 45 and the top 56, and those people in one day are down 20 to 30%. So huge volatility in both directions, which is the name of the game for penny stocks. And if you are disciplined, you can definitely take advantage of that. Bulls have to hold 275 and break 56 to change the daily trend. A lot of names, or a lot of people, I should say, took a lot of profit on that move as it erased a few weeks of downside very quickly, but gave a lot of it back. So that's where we stand overall in the sector. Where am I? What am I going to do? I'm in all cash right now for the most part. I will be interested in looking for some potential daily higher lows. Some names had enough volume to get my interest, but I'm going to be skeptical of the sector as a whole. So I will be patiently watching the higher liquidity names with more volume like CGC and Cron. I do, like I said, when we were waiting for that bounce, I believe that CGC has to bounce for the sector to bounce, and CGC as well as the major Canadian MJ names and the whole sector bounce together. So there's definitely correlations out there. So if CGC can change its daily trend, it'll be very notable to me, and I will be watching to see what the consolidation to start next week looks like on CGC, and I will be applying that to the USMJ sector as well. You know, if CGC has an increasing red day and a break of 22 on Monday, I'm going to stay away from USMJ, as it will look like most names are going to drop to lower lows. If we form a healthy 4-hour higher low, which is currently forming, and then look like we're going to get some continuation and change the 4-hour trend, then I'll be interested in playing some USMJ names. So don't forget those correlations out there. Correlation to the S&P 500 was not extremely strong this past 3 days, but correlation between Canadian and USMJ names was pretty strong, and that's worth paying attention to. So hope you have a good rest of your weekend. I appreciate you tuning in. Do good things out there, and we'll see you on Monday. So the end of video content for the next week or so is going to be from my recent trip up to New England, and it's going to start off here in New Hampshire. It's really cool to go back to places that I grew up going to. My dad used to take us camping back when I was 6 years old, so 25 years ago, going back to the same places. And that's really where my love for nature was sparked as a little kid, and being, blown away by wonderment of huge rocks and these cool boardwalks going through caves and things, which you'll see. But that was a whole bunch of nostalgia this past week, and was able to meet up with a bunch of friends that I went through grade school with that I still keep in touch with, and some families. So all good fun stuff. The leaves were just starting to change, missed it probably by about a week or two, but that let us have a little bit of solitude, because you better believe that area gets flooded with leaf tourists right now, pretty much through October. And this one area that we went at about 9 or 10 in the morning, and we were the only people there. So definitely worth the payoff to not have the full-blown foliage, but to experience it and be able to do so with a little bit of solitude.